Hi, friends. Welcome to the Top 100 Games Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Petty, and it's been a while. For those of you that didn't hear, I had COVID-19 for a while. I was vaccinated, got one of those breakthrough infections, and that was not a lot of fun. So I've been sick a bit. Then right after that happened, a bunch of stairs collapsed under me, and I broke my butt bone. So I've been busy. This is my tale of woe that I'm weaving for everyone, but I wanted you to know why we hadn't had a podcast in a while. So I'm on my magic donut pillow right now, sitting here in my home, maybe a little less energetic than normal. Forgive the lack of positivity and voraciousness in my voice. I'm doing my best, but I am thrilled to be back with the Top 100 Games Podcast, the definitive list of the 100 greatest games of all time, brought to you by a different guest every week. And I'm joined this week by an especially spectacular guest, somebody that I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome here today. Friends, you know this person from all over the internet, creator extraordinaire, self-proclaimed Cap Mom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome your friend, my friend, everyone's friend. Who are you, guest?
I am Susie Hunter, aka the Sphere Hunter. And yes, Cap Mom is very appropriate, I think. A lot of people do call me that, so I've kind of adopted it for myself.
Where did Cap Mom begin? How did that start?
It started on Twitter. Like a lot of my viewers were just calling me that, thank you, Cap Mom, and like you're my Cap Mom and all this kind of blessed Cap Mom, all that kind of stuff. Because I cover a lot of like Capcom developed video games, so I'm kind of known for that now. Where before it started as just like Resident Evil, was like my thing, but now it's kind of like all Capcom stuff, which is really cool.
You're a Capcom Spear specialist extraordinaire. I've also seen you do some things around Final Fantasy and Square Enix work, But it seems like Capcom is your home base. Now, what, pray tell, is a Spear Hunter for those who are unaware?
Oh, like a sphere hunter. Like the shape.
Yeah, I can't pronounce things correctly because of the sphere. Yeah, SPHERE. What is a Spear Hunter? What spheres are you hunting?
So the Sphere Hunter is actually a Final Fantasy X-2 reference, like the three, if you guys remember that game's the sequel to Final Fantasy X, X-2, which is very uncomfortable numbers to say together like that. The three main characters are like treasure hunters, but they hunt these things called spheres. And that's like the treasure of the world. And I always really liked that like title, like Sphere Hunter. Like it sounds really cool and like out of this world. So I was like, oh yeah, like that'll be my screen name for sure.
And you have been making, again, you specialize in videos about Capcom properties now, but tell people about all the things you create and why you do it, Susie. I just can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah. So way back in the day, I used to do like a lot of cosplay stuff. That's kind of how I entered the internet, was just like with like cosplay stuff. It was around like 2016 where I decided to make YouTube videos, and I think FF15 was coming out at that time, and I remember playing it, and I enjoyed it. It had some problems, but I was like, oh yeah, like I would love to make like a video game essay type review on this game as a YouTube video, and I did, and that sort of started everything. And my channel was mainly focused on Final Fantasy content for like a couple years, and things weren't as good as they are now. Like the videos weren't getting like tons of views, but I remember just like sticking with it, like I just kept on doing it. And then I think like an updated version of FF15 came out, and I did like another review on that. And that's when everything just took off.
You
went
deserve
semi-viral.
Yeah, you deserve the success you've had. You have wonderfully orchestrated video essays. I'm really just very envious of your mastery of editing and your script writing. You're really, really good at it. And you've succeeded to an enormous extent. I thank you for coming to our teeny tiny humble podcast to talk, because you're a really big deal in the video essay space and make some really good stuff. So thank you for taking a Saturday afternoon of your life to do this. It means a lot.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And that's the thing, like I used to be like way more like guarded and like in like my shell, I guess. But I like recently I've been doing like a bunch of podcasts and like interviews and stuff. So this is, and I realized how fun it could be just to like talk to people about video games and like how I make videos or whatever. And yeah, it's no problem on my end. Like it's a lot of fun, you know, so.
Before we get into the main topic, then let me ask you one question about that, if you don't mind. What's your advice for aspiring video essayists, people that want to create videos that tell stories the way that you do? If you were going to lay down just some basic starting groundwork for someone who hadn't done it much, what would you advise them to do to get a good start?
I would say try your best to make your content feel different, because unfortunately on like YouTube especially, and just like on the internet, like the overall like internet, like a lot of content doesn't really take off because there's so much similar sounding and similar looking content on the internet that it could be really easy for like the general viewing audience to just like pass it up, you know,
Mhm.
where it could be like the next like best creator, you know, is just like right there, but no one's clicking on their video. And I think also like having a very strong thumbnail game is very important for that. Like that's like a really big part of my videos is to make the thumbnail look as appealing as possible. And yeah, like I think also when somebody clicks on your video, like the first few seconds should be like really engaging to like hook them in, you know, to make them want to stay and watch the rest of your video.
Those are
So
three pieces of great advice. Thank you for sharing them. I
yes.
noticed with your thumbnail game, you have an animated version of yourself, a cartoon avatar that shows up in a lot of your thumbnails. Do you draw yourself, or is that someone does that for you?
I do. So I have like kind of like a team of artists at this
Okay.
point. I used to make my really old thumbnails had just like it was just like a little screenshot from the video, you know, because I
Hmm.
didn't really like get it yet
Yeah.
at the time. But I saw a couple of other YouTubers when I was first starting off that had like their avatar on
Yeah.
all of their thumbnails, but it was just their avatar, like the same picture over and over again. And I was like, I would love to do that, but have like a persona twist on it where
Right.
it's like, because if you've played the persona games, like whenever you talk to a character, it's just a drawing of them, but they have a different facial expression. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like I want to have an avatar, but with like a bunch of different faces. So I could like slap an emotion on the thumbnail, you know?
It's a great aesthetic. It works really wonderfully, and I really
Yeah.
enjoy it. Plus, you get to be a cartoon person, which is awesome. Who gets to be a cartoon? That's great. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's really cool, and then like a few different art styles because I have like so many people that I work with,
Yes. I
and it's
wondered
always
if it was
cool to
one or
like
several
have
doing it.
that.
Thank you for going. So now,
Yeah.
Susie, we are here to
Yes.
choose the number 45, greatest video game of all time. What's that mean? That means whatever you decide it means. But whatever you decide, unlike some other lesser lists, this is the definitive, the one, the only, the final word on the number 45 video game of all time. And so we ask you to take the spear of destiny in your hands and carve into the very
Yes.
living rock of history this word, this name. The number 45 video game of all time, according to you, is.
Resident Evil 1 remake released in 2002 on Nintendo
Woo!
GameCube.
Ooh, GameCube. All right, let's travel back in time. Susie, were you a Resident Evil fan from the beginning, or did you come along later? Were you there with your GameCube day one? Were you playing on your PlayStation before that? How did you and survival horror come together?
So this might come as a surprise to many of you. I am a little bit older than I look. And yes, back in 1999, I did play Resident Evil 1 on PlayStation. And I went on like with my older brother, and I went on to play the classic trilogy of those games. So when I got word, you know, from reading a magazine that Resident Evil 1 was going to get remade for the GameCube, and I was looking at the screenshots of it and it just looked like real life, I was like, my mind was like blown, and I couldn't wait. couldn't wait to play it.
I
So
love the idea that looking at these 480i images from the GameCube was just like real life, but it was the game. I think people forget that the GameCube was a beast power wise when it came out. Like, it's so cute. We forget how capable it was. It was a
yeah,
really powerful piece of hardware, easier to program for, and generally more impressive in terms of what you get out of it graphically than the PlayStation 2 most of the time. And so games on GameCube that somebody put a lot of work into look
totally.
great. So you're looking, what did you first see? Was it magazines? Was it ads? Was it TV? How'd you find out about it?
I think I was reading an issue of Nintendo Power that
Ah,
had like a full, it was like I think it was one of those things where it was like a 2 week kind of article. Like one week they would cover like the game a little bit, and then they would be like, oh, like stay tuned next week for even more coverage on this game. Um, and yeah, like I remember seeing Chris and Jill like in their updated GameCube like renditions, and I was just like, they look like real people. It's insane. And like obviously like years later I would come to find out that they actually did scan real people. Like and they cut a lot of corners to but like polished up the visuals to an extent that makes that game like look so good, like even to this day,
yeah.
and have it run on the GameCube, and like a lot of that is like because of like the pre-rendered backgrounds and stuff. Like it's a lot of 2D images in that game, but they're just like beautiful paintings
Yeah,
that
and
are
they're used so
photoreal.
effectively. You're going to get into this, I'm sure, because you're
Yeah.
an absolute expert on this game. You know everything
Yeah.
about it. But yeah, you've got there's so many things that were cheats in the original Resident Evil that
Hmm.
still look rough around the edges. I mean, you go back and play the PlayStation version, or God help you, the Saturn version, and
Yeah. Oh my God.
and you take a look at it, and yes, the gameplay and story is very compelling. The fundamentals of the classic tank controls are there. The spring-loaded cat stuff is there. The boss fights, you feel that kind of, okay, there's going to be a situational, environmental way to solve and defeat this creature, and a right weapon
Yeah.
for the right
Yeah.
moment. Those were all being established, but it was kind of, frankly, fuzzy. It was
Oh
impressive,
yeah.
but it was GameCube seemed to take a level of polish that I don't completely understand how they accomplished and make that work. Can you explain how they made it look so much better on Cube? This exact same, well, it's not exact same, but this similar game. How did they make it look so
Yeah.
much better? What worked?
So surprisingly enough, when they first started making that game, like the goal was to actually make the whole game 3D. And they were like, they quickly found that like after recreating like the first few rooms of the game, that was not going to happen because having those insanely detailed and like cluttered, like just dense with detail rooms, like all running in 3D, like was not gonna just run on the GameCube. So they just took pictures of all of the environments. But what they did in the remake, which they couldn't do in the first four games, was they put a lot of like FMV layers and particle effects over those pre-rendered still images to add a lot of motion to them. And that's where, when you have the knowledge of like, okay, this is an image that I'm looking at, but then you like look a little bit carefully and you're like, okay, but how is there like a trail of water like running down that wall and then like going across the floor into like a fountain in the like the lower part of this one room? It's like, how is this happening? And it's like, it's literally like that whole effect is just like a video layer on top of this still image, and like the little like gnats fluttering around like
Yeah.
a light is an FMV. It's like a particle effect rather, of just this cute little 2D effect that they put around the light in the image. And it's like, when you think about that, it frees up so much room for the character models and the monsters and all of the items that you pick up to be an insane level of quality that was not seen at that point in time, like in gaming. So
Yeah.
like having all of that together is like, oh yeah, that's how they did this. Like that's how they achieved true like photorealism on the GameCube, you know? And like
that's awesome. One of my favorite things
yeah,
about video games is when limitations force you to make design decisions that make a game better. The
yeah,
original Resident Evil, you know, the PlayStation was enormously powerful for its time, but extremely limited. So the use of the fixed camera angles and the pre-rendered backgrounds and that was obviously a technical necessity the first time around. But because it was a horror movie game, that gave you that incredible use of camera angles that's so smartly used to frighten you a million ways when things come in from just off screen in the same
yeah,
room, or when
yeah,
stepping across a threshold causes this, or a long hall that gives you an ominous. They took a weakness and they made it a strength.
yes,
And then
yes,
Resident Evil 1, like or remake, they embrace that philosophy with a new piece of hardware, re-examine what they can do, and to do the whole thing again with that in mind. What can we get out of this machine?
yeah, yeah.
Beautiful people, motion backgrounds, but still within the limitations. And oh, I love when that's why I'm excited about Playdate. You know, the little yellow thing with the little yellow Game Boy looking thing with the fishing thing on the side of it. Have you seen this?
No, what is this?
It's a
What
little
is
piece of
that?
dedicated hardware that's coming out next year, and they some people say it's a hipster thing, but it's just this deliberately limited little Game Boy that all kinds of people are developing games for, and it has very little memory and like a black and white screen and a
Yeah,
weird
yeah,
control, but it's all about challenging people to invent games around those limitations and see what you
yeah.
get. And
That
so I
sounds
like
super
that.
cool.
All right, I'm talking too much. Let's get
Oh
back
yeah,
to
no
you and
problem, no
Resident Evil.
problem. And you know, just to add on to that, like the absolutely like just insane piece of trivia that makes you know, Resident Evil 1 remake even more amazing in my eyes is that the whole game was made in like 1 year.
Oh,
So they made that game. They basically just crunched the entire time for a
ooh.
full year to make that game because they had such a strict deadline. And there's like tons of stories of like those developers just like sleeping under their desks and like their wives like putting out like like missing persons reports like, oh,
Oh my God, that makes me really
where's my
sad,
husband? And it's
actually.
like, oh yeah,
I
he's in
love
the
the game. I
office.
actually kind of wish I didn't know that because I think about, I mean, that could destroy families. That can, oh God, those poor
Yeah, yeah,
people. A year for that project. I had no idea.
yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, a little over a year. Like I think it was like a year and like 2 months or something. But it's like, I don't know. I think it's honestly like the greatest survival horror game ever. So all of that work totally paid off, in my opinion. And
The feat's incredible. The game's greatness is
yeah,
undeniable.
yeah.
I wish that he'd given the folks more time to be with their families, but
Yeah,
I
thankfully, the games industry is a little bit different now.
so we live in
Thankfully.
hope. The
Yeah.
stories I'm reading this week make me wonder. Uh, but that's a whole
Yeah,
other can
yeah.
of worms.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I do
All
love
right.
the design. So let's talk about what makes it work, because it is Resident Evil 1 remake. Now, Resident Evil was already
Yes.
recognized as a game that you know, there were survival horror games before Resident Evil. Obviously, there were all the way maybe back to Atari's Haunted House, and of course Alone in the
Mm,
Dark, and a bunch of others. But Resident Evil defined the genre as we understand it today. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so if you're going to take the OG and remake it to try to improve it, how do you do that? What did they do, Susie?
Oh, so this is my favorite part. So, and I have to rewind a little bit.
Sure.
So back before Resident Evil 1 even released on PlayStation, the producer of that game, this guy named Tokuro Fujiwara, like he made a game on the Famicom called Sweet Home,
Mm-hmm.
and that's another game. It's a little bit more of like a JRPG,
Mm-hmm.
more rather than like a survival horror game, but it has a lot of survival horror elements in it. You know, just like limited items, backtracking, really strong enemies like that force you to kind of like maybe I should just avoid this guy instead of fighting him. And like the world is like a giant house. It's a big mansion. Um, that game, it was successful, but it wasn't a smash hit, and it has a really strong cult following now. Tokuro Fujiwara like wanted to remake that game and like make it better, like take the idea and the concept of like surviving in like a haunted house and make it like really push it. So when the PlayStation 1 dev kits were like arriving at Capcom HQ, he was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm again with this game. And that's where Resident Evil comes from. Like it's technically a remake of Sweet Home, but they didn't have the license anymore, so they just made a new thing out of it. But the funny thing is that Resident Evil 1 being a remake of Sweet Home, still like the developers like Shinji Mikami and Tokuro Fujiwara and like Kenichi Iwao, who's the story guy, like they still couldn't do everything that they wanted to do because the PlayStation was too limited for them. Mm-hmm. So the GameCube comes around and they're like, okay, we're going to remake RE1 again. So RE1 remake is like the third remake of Sweet Home. If you think about
I had never
like,
thought
so
about it that way. I played Sweet Home and I you lay a lot of boards. There's a lot of board laying. There are those little, there's a lot, the limited items, the dangerous enemies, the doors between areas. Like I love that right from Resident Evil. But I never thought about the fact that remake is in fact the third version of Sweet Home. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And so they actually had
the boards came back, by the way. The boards came back recently in RE2 remake, where you put boards up on the windows.
Oh yeah. I remember I laughed out loud when I saw the boards in RE2.
You were like, Sweet Home.
Yeah. RE2 remake is actually the number 100 game on our list. Lucy O'Brien chose it there. It was the very first game we ever did in our first episode.
Yeah.
She brought that up there. So when we have RE1 remakes changes, how did they improve the game? What popped it? Because, Resident Evil, let me ask you this. Did Resident Evil scare you when you first played it? Not remake, but Resident Evil. Did it frighten you?
Oh, yeah, it totally did. Like when I first played it, I was just like horrified. But the more I played it, the more I got over it. Like I felt more like Jill was kind of like the more weapons I got and like the more like healing items and stuff like that, I felt like Jill was more of like kind of like a badass like SWAT team lady, like in this house, like I was surviving by the skin of my teeth, but I was still like surviving and feeling good about it. RE1 remake, when that came out and the zombie turned his head and it just looked like a real guy turning around and looking at me with no like color in his eyes, I was like being horrified doesn't even begin to describe it. Like it took me a while to actually play the remake of that game. And I would look at it, like I would look at the box like every day and be like, I'm going to play it today. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to play it. Actually, it's kind of scary. So the fear, the horror of RE1 was like enhanced like tenfold for the remake.
I agree with you. Absolutely. For a lot of specifics. I love the Retronauts podcast a long time ago said, something to the effect of that they defined a survival horror as a game where dread was an essential gameplay element.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Where the fear of playing, where you're literally looking at the disc, wondering if you should put it in, or you're afraid to walk forward. And then I think about remake. I mean, what did you do the first time a zombie got back up?
I was so blown away. I remember exactly which one it was too, and like which hallway it was. And I think it was in the mirrored hallway.
Yeah.
Which is a whole new hallway that they added to the game, by the way, which I wouldn't even know what to do in that hallway because it's a brand new place. But yeah, I remember just being like, oh my God, what? And that like he's running at me and like clawing me. Like he's basically moving and is hacking, which is like something that has never happened up until that point. And I remember him being like really strong, this particular zombie, and screaming a lot. And just like I couldn't do anything. Like I was just frozen in fear and it killed me. Like it totally just annihilated me. And I was like, whoa, what the flip is going on here?
Well, the game subverted your expectations. You thought you knew this game, and the fear does. As you become more powerful and more experienced, you get to know where the jump scares are in these games. But it's subverting expectations is so frightening. I love the game Space Invaders Extreme, which is a terrible name for a great video game. It's a wonderful shooter. But one of the first things that happens to Space Invaders Extreme is you're fighting the Space Invaders, and they're in their little thing, and then suddenly one of them just dives right at you. And if you don't, the first time it happened, I shouted out loud and died. Like I just dropped my controller because I was like, you can't do that. Like it's a subverted expectation. That's not what those little guys do. The red head, red top, red cap. What are they called? I always forget. Zombies. When they get back up and they're all
the Crimson Heads.
Crimson Heads. Thank you. Crimson Heads just freaked me out. What else did they change? What
subverting expectations is like the name of that game too, because there's just so much from the minute you start that game. Like the second you're in the main hall after the first zombie encounter, which plays out pretty similarly to the original, like you don't even go the same way that you do in the original RE1. Like that you have to go into like the backyard of the mansion. So you leave the mansion and like go into this like backyard area that's like a graveyard, and you like go down into this crypt, and it's like a really long hallway down into this crypt. Like it feels like you're going to hell basically. Like it's like, am I ever gonna find the bottom of this staircase right now? It's just like a black hole, and there's just a coffin hanging from the ceiling, and it's like, what is this? Like this is a completely different game that I'm playing right now. But that's where you get the key, the sword key that opens up like most of the doors at the very start of the game. And the changes don't stop there, because the second you get that sword key and you go through the door that you always go through, which is the L-shaped hallway where the dogs jump through the window, you're walking down that hallway and you're ready for it, you're waiting, and just the glass shatters, but no dogs come through.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is going on right now? I don't understand what's happening. Like, this is insane. Like, and to add to your Crimson Head point, like that the Crimson Heads are so effective because they telegraph it like the second you kill a normal zombie by not having the zombie disappear, you know, because there were 4 video games in the Resident Evil series up until that point where you kill a zombie, you leave the room and come back, it's gone. The body is gone. In Remake, you kill a zombie, I'm doing quotes right now, quotations. You leave the room and come back and the body's still there. And it's like, wait a minute. So like what? I think I said this in my video on the game, but like I was like, oh, is this like to make the game feel more realistic, like an immersion thing? Like, oh, maybe just the bodies like stay there. But I noticed the zombie dogs disappeared. So I was like, something's weird, something's wrong here. And then of course, Crimson Heads get back up and you're like, oh, okay.
And they roar and scream and charge at you, clawing, and you scream and die. Yeah.
And you drop the controller on the floor.
Such a beautiful thing. I love that experience. I really do.
It kind of goes back to what I said about like the devs like working super hard on this game, because it would have been so easy for them to just make the game like prettier and like have better voice acting, but they wanted to scare people that already knew the game, you know, and they just went above and beyond and like added so many new hallways, so many different rooms. All of the puzzles are completely remade too. Like they're similar looking, but the way you actually finish them and the way you do them is different. And I think that's so amazing. That's how every remake should be, I think, in my opinion. Like follow that golden path, but change it, you know?
So is this the model? Let me ask you, for up to this point in video games, remasters were certainly a thing that happened. I mean, you have stuff like Super Mario All-Stars, which was a very interesting remaster, but mostly a graphic change. This was a remake. Video games were still a very young medium in 2002. They're still a very young medium, but they were a really young medium then. And it was unusual for a game to be utterly remade deliberately, especially a modern game.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at something like Metal Gear Solid, that's a remake of Metal Gear 2. Okay, I get that. It's just a PlayStation remake of Metal Gear 2, but it's also, there's like a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
Whereupon this was a remake of a fairly recent game. Did this set the template, the pattern for what a remake should be, Susie? Is it kind of the example we should all be striving for? Is this what started it?
I think it is personally, and I might be biased, obviously, about that, but I find more and more that a lot of the remakes that we get nowadays, Shadow of the Colossus remake, the Demon Souls remake, like that, those kinds of games, I think they're really great. But they, at the end of the day, like they are really just, like two new features are added in, but they're mostly like a graphical overhaul or like a voice acting overhaul, a presentation overhaul, we'll say that. Um, the Resident Evil 1 remake, it feels like a completely different game, like compared to the original. And I'm pretty sure the goal with that was that Shinji Mikami like actually wanted to replace the original with
Yeah.
the remake, and that like I I can respect where he was coming from, because like as a creator, he was not satisfied with the RE1 that we got back in, 96 and, the director's cut or whatever. But I kind of don't like the idea of replacing stuff, and that goes back to what I was saying, like about like a Demon Souls remake or a Shadow of the Colossus remake. Like it just feels like, oh, I want to replace it with a better looking version where you could do much more with a remake. And the Resident Evil 1 remake is that, in my opinion. Like it looks better, it sounds better, it makes you feel better, I guess, but it's also doing so much more. And there's like a whole other like plot thread that's added to the game that I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But
Well, let's talk about, they took
I
what
think the
worked and made it
RE1
better.
remake is good.
They took what worked and made it better, and they focused on the greatest part. Actually, do you talk about that plot thread? I'd like to hear about that, because that's an important change too. That's another huge part of this.
Yeah. And it's like one of my favorite moments in gaming history. It's like, and it's just, you're going, after you complete the mansion, like all of the puzzles in the mansion for the first time, you go to this second mansion, basically, which is like the guard house. It's like a smaller building, where like the employees like sleep and live, basically. In the remake, so in the original, you just go there, like you just open the back door to the mansion and you just go and everything's fine. Like, you just, oh, now I'm in a new environment, new puzzles. But in the remake, you don't just go there. Like the crank that you find in like the connecting area between the two houses, it's not there anymore. So in that little shed room that connects the two places, there's another door that was never there before. And if you go through that door, it leads you into the forest, the Raccoon City, or sorry, the Arclay forest. And you're walking through this forest, and it is like the most moody, atmospheric, like dreadful experience of your life. And all of a sudden, you hear a woman painfully moaning off in the distance. And it's like, what is that? Is that a human? Is that a survivor? Like, oh, I need to know. You follow the moaning to a small cabin where the fire is on. So someone's there. It's got to be someone. And also the crank is in that room as well. And it's like, oh, here's my key item. Now I could get to the other mansion, basically. And on your way out, Lisa Trevor shows up. And Lisa Trevor is an invincible, tentacled, like mutated human woman who's like, who clearly, like, she's in there, she's not just like a scary monster, but she is horrifying. And she's like saying things to you. She's screaming for her mother and just like screaming in pain if you shoot her. And it's like, what is this? What is happening? Like it almost feels like cosmic horror.
It
like
does.
her design,
Yeah.
and like just the whole scenario is like, and the scare is built up so perfectly to where it could have just been like, oh, she's in the forest with you, run away.
No, they build it. They build and they build.
Walk. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like layers of building up to this like extremely shocking moment,
I still remember shrieking and opening fire just because, not realizing that it wasn't going to do. And of course, then you're wasting ammo. Then there's just so many things happening there that, like, and if you don't know what's going to take place, and the game it's beautiful that way. It's just, and then there's a lot of it surprises me how much replay value there is in Resident Evil Remake. That's another one. It's a game that's not going to scare you as much on a replay, but there's still a lot of incentive to go through it. There are things like the speed runs. There's somewhere out on the internet when RE1 Remaster came out a few years ago, which is based on Remake. I was working at IGN. Somewhere out on the internet, still on YouTube, is the worst guide to getting the rocket launcher. It's a 3-hour video I made. It's just like one long talking take of getting the rocket launcher. Don't use that guide. It's terrible. I'm awful at Resident Evil, and it shows in that video. But I did love that there were those kinds of incentive features, and they did all that extra stuff as well, and all the extra work. Susie, let me ask you this to encompass it. You've talked about so many things that make it special.
Yes.
Emotionally, I mean, what you do for a living, you create content about Resident Evil, about Capcom. This piece of your life and childhood has become your vocation and your public voice. How's this all fit in?
How does RE
why
fit
this?
in?
Why RE? Why the world of, why Jill? Why, God help us, Chris, the master of unlocking?
I think the simple answer is that the Resident Evil especially is just like, it's always been very important to me because I played it with my family, back in the day. It's every single entry except for the latest Village. Like I would always play with someone, whether that was, my brother, the first 3 games, my mom, I played with RE0 with, and my dad, I played RE1 Remake with, so I have a lot of good memories attached to the series, and I feel like it definitely has shaped my tastes as like a gamer, like the types of things that I like to experience in my games, like horror elements, like item management, like things that other people might take for granted. Like I love the management of those games, and yeah, like it's just the simple answer is I played it when I was young, and like it really stood out to me in like a very positive way.
That's a great answer, because it's not just nostalgia, it's experience. I mean, nostalgia could be beautiful, but also the joy of a memory that there's a lot of warmth for me around video games the same way. I've shared a story about before. I spent some time in a mental health facility, and Mario Odyssey had a lot to do with me getting better. Video games can touch us in strange ways and move us profoundly. I'm glad your life is full of positive experiences with this game and with the people you love. That's absolutely great.
Yeah, it's one of those series where, when I was having like a really hard time in my life, like I would play a Resident Evil game and just seeing like, Jill destroying Nemesis at the end was such a inspiring thing for me, where I would be like, oh yeah, I could get past whatever I'm dealing with. Jill has to fight a giant scary monster, like what do I have to do? I have to do this like, this minuscule thing in my life. Like I could conquer it just like Jill. Let's do it.
Is Jill best star? Is Jill best star?
Yes. She's my favorite character.
Yeah, she's the best of them all. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. We asked our friends on Twitter what their pick for the number 45 game of all time is. And now this is the part where you got to be kind or cruel. All right. So I'm going to read you some of these. So
okay.
There's a bunch of, we won't get through nearly all because there's just a jillion of them today. But just say 1 to 3 things. 1, if you haven't played the game, just I haven't played it, because nobody's played everything by a long shot.
Okay.
If you have played it, tell us where you'd put it on the list. They're saying 45. You can say 7. You can say 95 or 3rd, because it's 100 video games. That's super.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many good video games. They're not all going to be just be like, sorry. Don't worry. You're not going to break their hearts. They can handle it. So let's go for a few. James says Jet Moto.
I do like it. I'm comfortable with it being 45. Yeah.
45, right there, right in that spot.
Yeah.
All right. Seth says Luigi's Mansion.
Oh, I might put Luigi's Mansion a little higher on the list because
Yeah,
it's very cute. It's like a cute Resident Evil.
it is. It is very. Which do you like best of that series of Luigi's Mansion?
I think I like the first one the best.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
awesome. Is that nostalgia too, or is it just the fact that it's the most kind of survival horror of the three?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah. I think Luigi's Mansion 3 is the best Ghostbusters game I've ever played.
That's a good opinion to have, I think.
Yeah, my wife and I played that one together co-op as Luigi and Luigi, and it's so much fun co-op. It's great.
Yes.
Brian says Miss Pac-Man.
Oh, Miss Pac-Man should be like 10.
Oh wow. You dig Miss Pac-Man?
I love Miss Pac-Man. Yeah, it's just it's a better Pac-Man game, you know, like you have Pac-Man and then Miss Pac-Man came out and it was just like a freaking improvement overall.
Yep.
You know,
It's just better in every way. I agree. It's
super fast. Like,
yeah, you got that speed up chip.
The stages are like built better, I think, and it's just more fun. Yeah.
Miss Pac-Man is one of the few arcade games that I'm like okay at. Like Miss Pac-Man with a speed up chip, I'm actually kind of sort of on the edge of competent. Like I can play that for quite a while. Give me a quarter and I'm going to be at that machine for some time. And that's
exactly.
fun. Susie Hunter says, with a thoughtful emoji. So I think we know Susie's answer now.
Yeah.
Tony says Metroid Zero Mission.
I haven't played Zero Mission yet, but I really want to.
It's the best reason to own a Wii U. The old GBA emulator on Wii U has Zero Mission and Aria of Sorrow, which is one of the best Castlevania games.
Oh, yeah, so it is.
If you have a Wii U in a closet, that's a great reason to get it out.
I actually pulled it out recently because I had to get some footage of RE4 on the Wii.
Zero Mission's pretty boss. You might enjoy it. I really
want to check it out. Yeah.
Mike says OG Doom.
Oh, Doom. I think that's got to be like a top 5, right? Because it revolutionized first-person shooters. It didn't invent the first-person shooter, but it made them so palatable for a lot of people.
Yeah, codified it.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I played so much Doom back in the day. Yeah. I still do I still play Doom. I have I do a lot of my for fun writing on a little Chromebook, and Doom is the first thing I installed on it. It's just like having it wherever I go.
I've got it on my Switch and I play it every once in a while.
The Switch version's good. I like it. Yeah, it's that's another nice thing about Doom. The fact that it's more of a flat plane makes it really great on like simple handheld consoles can play it really well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm really excited about it. I know that Quake and Dusk are both coming out in cartridge form from like limited runs. So I'm pretty excited about picking both of those up for Switch.
Yeah, totally.
Brian says God of War 2018. So Corey's God of War.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being in like the 20s.
Yeah, I love that game.
Yeah, I like that game quite a bit. Yeah.
Danny says Jet Set Radio.
Oh, Jet Set Radio is awesome. I love Jet Set Radio. I'm comfortable with it being 45. Yeah.
I can't remember who I was talking with recently. It slips my mind. But somebody was pointing out to me that the new PlayStation 5 controller, you've used it, I assume, have you gotten to play, the incredible, if you haven't experienced it, the tactile feedback in Astrobot is just amazing for anybody listening that hasn't gotten to do it. But
yeah.
Can you imagine a Jet Set Radio remake with that controller for the spray can, like all the feedback stuff?
When you're grinding on a rail and you could do so much with like the triggers and everything.
The triggers, the music, the tagging. I can't wait. I hope that happens.
Like I'm just imagining like grinding and the controllers shaking, but while you're spraying, the triggers are vibrating. Like that would be so cool.
Justin says Final Fantasy IX.
Oh, FF9 is classic. Yeah, that's a legendary game. I could see that being number 9. Honestly.
Oh, there we go. FF9 is that your favorite Final Fantasy?
FF10 is my favorite for like a lot of different reasons, but before FF10 existed, FF9 was my favorite. So
FF10's been on this list. That was Alexa Ray Korea's pick, and that's That's a fun
Yeah.
episode if y'all have to listen to it.
FF10 did a lot for JRPGs, like just making them just incredible. Yeah.
Ooh, there's so much happiness. It's
Yeah.
fun. Dimitri says Phantasy Star 4.
I unfortunately haven't played many Phantasy Star games. So
That's okay, on account of the fact that I don't think most of the world did, which is why we don't really get them much anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Four is a masterpiece. It's an incredible video game. But it's a product of a different age. But it's a great 16-bit RPG. It really, really feels great. Let's see. What else do we have here? Oh, there's just, again, there's kind of a million of these. Brendan says Shovel Knight.
I also haven't played Shovel Knight.
Okay, now that one, there's no excuse. That way, it's Susie. I would never want to put you on the spot.
Sorry, God.
But no. There's too many games to play. But Shovel Knight is a can't miss game. Shovel Knight looks like a cute little remake.
I gotta play it, yeah.
But it's not a cute little remake. It's a Shovel Knight is brilliant. It starts cute and it's this throwback nostalgia thing, but it has some of the best level design I've ever seen in 2D games. It's brilliant. It's mostly a you versus the stage game, like you versus the level as opposed to you versus the enemies.
Gotcha.
And it's really well designed. I'm a big fan of that game. Let's see, we'll do a couple more of these. People are so wow, everybody jumped in here. Friends, I feel terrible for not getting to everyone. Ty. This is Ty from Uppercut. Says Dragon Age Origins Awakening. Dragon Age Origins Awakening.
Oh, yeah, Dragon Age. I love Dragon Age. It's great. And I think Origins might be my favorite out of the three games. I could see that being even higher on the list.
Where would you put it?
Maybe 37. It's a really, really deep RPG that I wish more Western RPGs would emulate what it does. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of has that energy, right?
Seems to have that vibe
of a Dragon Age.
Yeah, and I'm excited about that. And I think it's interesting Ty specified Awakening, which was the expansion. So I'll have to ask Ty about that when I get the opportunity. It's interesting you brought up Western RPGs because this last tiny little bit of the show is my little narcissistic moment where I picked my number 45 real quick. And my pick at number 45 is Planescape Torment, which is
I love that game. That's a great game.
Expound. Susie, why do you love it? I'm so excited.
It's just so moody and depressing, and I love the story and the main character so much. It's great. It has an amazing visual aesthetic too. I really want to replay it at some point.
It's available on all kinds of stuff. It's on Switch. You can play it there, which is always exciting. And it's been. Oh, go ahead.
I think I recently got it on my PS5. But you take it. You take it.
No. I love when the guest talks. Usually when I say Planescape Torment, people stare at me funny. Having somebody that's just no, I love this game. I'm please talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that game, it's like a point and click adventure game. And I feel like Resident Evil games, the classics, have a lot of point and click adventure DNA in them. Yeah. So that's definitely a genre of game that I love a lot. I love a ton of older FMV kind of point and click adventure games, isometric ones as well. But yeah,
it's by Black Isle, the folks that made Fallout 2. It's got that point and click adventure, mystery solving, finding cool stuff style. It's got the incredible dialogue tree style that you associate with a BioWare game, and it's got this D&D based numbers based combat system that's kind of quirky enough. But then they've changed. What I love about Planescape Torment, not just story wise but mechanically, is it subverts just about everything you expect from an RPG.
Yeah, for sure.
it's this weird, skewed, hilarious. Oh, it's funny. Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
But it's also a game about not being able to die. Usually death is the worst thing in an RPG, but It's completely about, no, seriously, my problem is I can't die. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
I love that game.
You're just endlessly tormented
Yeah,
with
it's
death. It's
wonderful.
great.
And so yeah, terrible name, Planescape Torment, but a lot of fun. And you can play it on a lot of modern stuff, y'all. So it's on, Susie pointed out, it's on PS5. I know it's on Switch. It's available on mobile. You can play it all kinds of places. You're gonna look at it and be like, well, this looks old. Please give it a shot.
Yeah. Don't even think about Resident Evil. This whole episode is about Planescape Torment.
No, no,
Go
no.
play
We're gonna talk about RE1 remake because it's a great pick. Susie, really, this has just been a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. You're just a delightful guest. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This was a lot of fun. Yeah, I would totally come back on again. This is great.
Yeah. We met you. Watch out.
Yeah.
When people volunteer, they get asked back on to do things.
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe when you get to number 4, I could come back with Resident Evil 4 or something.
We'll is 4 the best Resident Evil?
It might be, but my favorite is RE1 remake.
RE1 remake.
Yeah. I can't betray my RE1 remake.
No, I think that there's several strong candidates in that series for incredible standout games. I go back and forth a lot. All right, Susie, anything you want to let people know about that you're up to right now? We haven't actually specified where folks can find. I mean, searching Spear Hunter is gonna SPHERE is gonna find you pretty quick. But what do you want to point out to folks that you're doing?
So just to plug everything real quick, basically everything is the Sphere Hunter. I think the only thing that's different is Instagram. I think it's got like underscores in it, but that's where you can find me. Just look up the Sphere Hunter, or even just Susie, SUZI, Susie Hunter. But yeah, right. Currently, I'm working on a Resident Evil 25th anniversary celebration video. So looking forward to that. It's going to be, I don't want to say exactly what I'm going to be talking about in the video, but it's going to be very exciting. There's some guests in this video, some familiar voices that you guys definitely know if you know Resident Evil. And yeah, it's some on-camera Elvira tier level stuff.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yes. So that's my next video.
I cannot wait. All right. Well, when that pops, we'll all be looking. So check out the Sphere Hunter, Susie Hunter.
Yes.
Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful time. Friends, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your patience with the show being gone for a while. I am really happy to be back and doing it again. There'll be more episodes soon. Thank you for listening. If you want to support us financially, you can do that on patreon.com/Jared Petty. That's patreon.com/Jared Petty. If you don't want to, that's fine too, because this is a free show and we're just having fun. So thanks a lot for listening. Talk with you again soon.
Later, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Susie.